The South China Sea is a vital crossroads for global trade and a source of immense natural wealth. Every day, massive container ships traverse its waters carrying goods that power economies worldwide. Beneath the surface lie vast reserves of oil and natural gas resources that could fuel cities and industries for decades. The sea is also a lifeline for millions, providing rich fishing grounds that sustain coastal communities. This combination of trade, energy, and food makes the South China Sea one of the world's most valuable regions. But with value comes competition. Several countries, most notably the Philippines and China, have overlapping claims to its islands and waters. Their dispute is about more than just territory. It's a struggle for resources, sovereignty, and influence. Tensions have simmered for decades, sometimes erupting into direct confrontations. The stakes are global. The United States, Japan, Australia, and European nations all have a vested interest in keeping these waters open and secure. For them, the conflict is a test of international law and the global order. If one nation can dominate these waters by force, it could set a dangerous precedent worldwide. That's why the South China Sea, and the dispute between the Philippines and China, is watched so closely by the world. What happens here could shape the future of international relations. Let's dive into the key moments and motivations behind this high-stakes conflict. The modern dispute began in the mid-20th century, when China published its now famous 9-line, claiming most of the South China Sea. For years, these claims were mostly theoretical, but things changed in the 1990s. In 1995, the Philippines discovered Chinese structures on Mischief Reef, well within its exclusive economic zone. This was a wake-up call, signaling China's willingness to enforce its claims on the water. Tensions escalated in 2012 at Scarborough Shoal, where a standoff ended with China taking control of a traditional Filipino fishing ground. In response, the Philippines took China to international court, filing a case under the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. In 2016, the tribunal ruled overwhelmingly in favor of the Philippines, declaring China's 9-line invalid under international law. China rejected the ruling outright and continued building artificial islands complete with military facilities. Despite the legal victory, the Philippines lacked the power to enforce the decision. China's activities have only intensified, transforming the dispute from a legal battle into a contest of power and presence. The legal clarity is there, but the reality on the water remains unchanged. The Philippines now faces a neighbor that refuses to back down. The world is left watching as the conflict continues to evolve. But why do both nations want control so badly? For China, the South China Sea is about history, security, and national pride. Beijing claims its sailors and fishermen have used these waters for centuries, making the 9-line a symbol of sovereignty and resurgence. The sea is also a crucial route for China's energy imports and exports. Control means security. For the Philippines, the claim is rooted in international law. Under UNCLOS, much of the disputed area falls within its exclusive economic zone, granting rights to fish and exploit resources. The 2016 tribunal ruling backs this up, but enforcement is another matter. Beyond legalities, both nations covet the sea's rich fisheries and potential oil and gas reserves. For Filipino communities, access to these waters is a matter of survival. For China, military outposts on artificial islands extend its reach and shift the regional balance of power. At its core, the dispute is about prosperity, security, and national identity. That's why neither side is willing to back down. In the Philippines, the South China Sea dispute is deeply personal, a modern David versus Goliath. Stories of Filipino fishermen being harassed by Chinese vessels fuel anger and calls for a tougher stance. National pride runs high, but some worry about the economic fallout of antagonizing a major trading partner. This creates a national debate: stand firm or seek compromise. In China, the government tightly controls the narrative, presenting the sea as an inalienable part of Chinese territory. Most citizens see their country's actions as rightful defense, not aggression. Questioning the official stance is rare, and the 2016 tribunal ruling is widely dismissed as foreign interference. Strong public support gives both governments little room to compromise. With emotions running high on both sides, finding common ground is a daunting challenge. The dispute is as much about identity as it is about territory. The South China Sea is now a stage for military brinkmanship. China has built fortified artificial islands complete with runways, ports, and missile systems. These outposts allow China to project power and challenge the presence of other navies. The Philippines, with help from allies, is modernizing its military but remains outmatched. Instead, it relies on patrols, alliances, and deterrence. Both sides use coast guards and maritime militias, leading to tense, close encounters at sea. These gray zone tactics stop short of war but keep tensions high. The United States, as a treaty ally of the Philippines, regularly conducts freedom of navigation operations and joint exercises in the region. This U.S. presence acts as a check on China, but also raises the risk of accidental conflict. The military balance is delicate, and a single miscalculation could spark a crisis. The region remains on edge with no clear end in sight. The contest is as much about signaling resolve as it is about actual combat power. Diplomacy is more important than ever. Diplomacy in the South China Sea is a high-stakes balancing act. The Philippines pursues both direct talks with China and stronger alliances, especially with the United States. The 1951 Mutual Defense Treaty is central, with Washington reaffirming its commitment to defend Philippine vessels and forces. Manila is also deepening ties with Japan, Australia, and European partners to build a coalition for a rules-based order. China, meanwhile, insists disputes should be settled bilaterally, using its economic clout to sway neighbors and resist outside involvement. ASEAN has tried to mediate, but progress on a binding code of conduct has been painfully slow. Disagreements over legal force and geographic scope persist, stalling meaningful agreement. China prefers non-binding arrangements, while ASEAN's diverse interests complicate consensus. The diplomatic chessboard is crowded, but no side has found a winning move. The search for a peaceful solution continues, but the path is anything but clear. The stakes for regional stability and global order remain immense. The future of the South China Sea hangs in the balance. The most likely scenario is a tense stalemate. No war, but no peace, with periodic flare-ups and constant risk of escalation. A diplomatic breakthrough, like a binding code of conduct or joint resource development, remains possible but distant. The worst-case scenario is open conflict, which could quickly draw in the United States and spiral into a global crisis. The economic and human costs would be catastrophic. That's why the world is watching so closely. The dispute is a test of whether international law or raw power will shape the future. The outcome will affect global trade, security, and the balance of power for decades to come. The choices made in Manila, Beijing, and Washington will determine whether the South China Sea becomes a zone of shared prosperity or a flashpoint for conflict. The world cannot afford to look away. The stakes could not be higher.